Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Just Two Dads. I am Brian Altunian, co-host with my friend and partner and colleague and partner in Thrive, Mr. Sean Francis. And today on our Just Two Dads podcast, we're talking about social media and the impact of social media on our families and what it means to expand your brand across social media and the implications it may have for others. So, without further ado, it's going to be a great conversation. We've already begun it, and we're looking forward to this conversation. So, you're on Just Two Dads. As we get started, I want to thank everybody who's catching us live on Facebook or after the fact, or catching us on video on our YouTube channel. Thank you for being here. Thank you for participating. We want to get your comments and get some feedback. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel and tell your friends, share it if the content's compelling. We hope that you will not only subscribe, but also share it with folks that you know. We are also on podcasts. We're on Apple Podcasts and Google Podcasts and iHeartRadio, Pandora, basically anywhere where there's a podcast outlet. So we thank you for tuning in and listening to the conversation. We hope that we keep our content compelling and fresh for you all. And finally, for our families down in the U.S. Virgin Islands, you can hear us on WSTX AM radio every week. We're happy to be part of that family. And again, we welcome you listening in on our conversation. So today, without further ado, thank you everybody for coming in and participating. Today, Sean, first of all, let's start off. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well. I'm blessed and grateful. I know I say that all the time, but each week when we have these conversations, I'm forced to think of a reason for those feelings, and I'm never short on them, especially with the topic that we have today and some of the appreciation that it's given me. And like many things, it begins with a conversation that you and I had earlier this week. As a matter of fact, as recent as yesterday or the day before. So,
interestingly, it's a conversation that I think is happening in more households, especially after during the pandemic and beyond. I think this is a good conversation for people to have some consideration and also, think about the counter arguments, if you will. So on that, I'm sorry, I totally interrupted you. You were starting your welcoming thoughts for the.
No, that's it. That's it. I'm grateful, and I'm anxious for us to be able to have this conversation. And like many conversations, there's a topic and then there's subtopics, and we're talking around it. So we should let our listeners know, what the topic is, and what it is about social media and our children. By our children, I mean those of us that are raising children with special needs. And it's interesting because the way this kind of came about is for a while now, I've been thinking about the older my children get, especially Elijah, I think about what I post. I've always tried to think about what I post
on social media.
Yes, what I post on social media, period. I pray on it in the sense that I hope that it's something that inspires somebody. In other words, I'm not going to post that I stubbed my toe unless somebody's going to get something out of it, and I let them know how I got over that pain, and but not just to vent, although I know we need that sometimes too. And what happens is when Elijah was younger, when he was a toddler, you're just thinking you're sharing a cute picture, so there isn't anything that much to it. He gets a little older, and I'm sharing pictures of us taking our walks, and people find that inspiring, especially when they think of he's wearing a suit. They saw how he wouldn't wear anything other than casual clothes before, so they see the progression and there's encouragement there. But I have thought along the way of the fact that anyone that looks at my social media profile with a pretty quick eye might think that he's our only child. And the truth of the matter is we have 7 children, two of which are my daughters, my wife's daughters from her previous marriage. And then, of course, we became legal guardians to and eventually adoptive parents to my sister-in-law's 4 kids. And I never consciously decided, I'm not going to ask them. I don't want to put them in a situation, make them uncomfortable. But it just was easier to post Elijah's pictures and progress and our moments and things like that. And then I stopped to think too, you know,
and just to be clear, you didn't ask their permission to post pictures of them on social media. Just to clarify that when anybody listening, like, what are we talking about?
And that was the other thing, because I know that they're not necessarily crazy about that. They don't mind if they post their own, but even that, there's not but so much of it, right? And on Elijah's case, you know, I started doing that when he was so young. It didn't really, I never stopped to think about how he might feel about that. And then the other thing I thought is, well, you know what? Even though he's verbal, he's not going to say to me, you know, I don't want it posted. You know, I don't know how I feel about that. Now, when we take our walks, he'll start to do it. And, you know, when I post them, I'll say, you know, and if you're watching this, we love you. And he's aware of that. So he said that, you know, on his own at times. But my wife and I were talking the other day, you know, based on an article that she was reading about some of the darker side of posting our children's pictures and stuff. Now, I make sure that when I do post, I don't post an actual location. And if we go someplace, I don't post it while we're still there. I have that level of consciousness. But what I've thought about, especially what it got me to thinking about, is when it comes to, you know, our children in the special needs community, depending on what the situation is, like Jordan's not only verbal, your daughter, but to a point where she at a younger age would be able to tell you, Dad, can you not post my picture? Or she would ask, why don't you post my pictures? She can express how she feels about that. Elijah, though he's verbal, isn't able to quite comprehend that and wouldn't wrap his head around the idea of people, you know, there's things out there where they talk about electronic kidnapping. What people do is they take the pictures of your children and they will hold the picture for ransom per se, or threaten to use the image in all kind of, you know, unscrupulous manners. In some cases, posing as that person, in, you know, sexual exploitation, all kinds of different things that, you know, hadn't really thought about. And it happened to come about at a time where this past week, I found myself posting a lot less. I posted once or maybe twice. And in each of those cases, it was a repost of something else, because I'm rethinking what my image looks like, what the pages look like, and what I want to get out there. And is maybe think about that with regard to our brand as well, too, just to not pulling away from it, but how do you make the most out of this thing? And how do you set yourself apart by adding value to people? But that's a separate conversation from just the, you know, the thoughts that we have as parents to children with special needs.
Well, and again, just to be clear for people who are listening, the article that you're referring to was an article on there's an app called Jellies app, and it's a, you know, safe videos for kids, right? So parents who are conscientious of videos that can be found online that are safe for children. And in fact, I'm going to post. They have a blog. I'm going to post this on the blog. I'm going to post the blog address on our video. If you can't see it, it's jelliesapp.com, JELLIES, jelliesapp.com/blog/ and then it's very long. 5 reasons not to post about your child on social media. You probably can Google 5 reasons not to post about your child on social media. And the thing I'm going to say about this too, Sean, is that, you know, no matter what happens, first of all, there's the argument and there's the counter argument, right? Social media has made it normal for people to share about their lives and about their family and about their personal life. I mean, you know, again, the joke about people who post pictures of the food they're eating, and, you know, the general consensus is like, who cares what you're eating for lunch, right? But all to, you know, the dance and you know, the dances that you do or the places you go. I mean, you know, we celebrated Father's Day, and Blake and I went to an Angels game as, you know, part of our Father's Day celebration. And because we're a baseball fanatic family, right? Well, I said, we're primarily Dodgers fans. We live in Southern California, so we're Dodgers fans, but Dodgers were out of town. So we went to an Angels game. We kind of don't care. We love local teams, and we love the game of baseball. And like, we were even strategic in how we, you know, chose our seats to sit right near the bullpens, because Blake is both a pitcher and And he's a starting catcher as well. And so being able to kind of see how these guys warm up in the bullpen, that was a big thing for him. We were literally on the first row right above. So that's a fun thing. That's a thing that we shared. That's a thing that we know about that people know about Blake. Now, the funny thing about Blake is, to your point, he'll be like, oh, that's a terrible picture of me. Like, don't post that picture of me, Dad. Like, don't post that. And meanwhile, by the way, when we're driving in traffic and I'm like, traffic, he's like on Snapchat, he's showing like him and me, you know, in the car, like no questions asked, right? He's like, he just posts stuff on Snapchat, you know, and he gets comments all the time. Hey, your dad looks mad, or your dad looks, you know, road rage or whatever. But it is funny because you're right. Some of our like Gabby, my daughter who just graduated from college, we're very open, you and I, about because we talk about our families here on this podcast, and we help families, and, you know, we're conscientious of, you know, of the impact that we can have on families. And so, you know, when I posted pictures of Gabby from graduation, she's between those posts and then a couple of Father's Day posts with the kids, Gabby was like, man, you're doing the typical dad thing. You're picking the worst pictures of us to post. Not don't post pictures of us. It was, you're picking the worst ones. Like, can you find the better ones can you choose the better ones to post?
Right.
And so I find that to be interesting because her perspective was not, and I think our children who are, you know, she's a young adult now, our teenagers, our young adults who do use social media much more than our generation ever did. I don't think they question whether or not you are posting, but what you're posting, right? They don't want you to post things that could be embarrassing to them or show them in a bad light. Like, if they're going to do something stupid and embarrassing, they want to be the ones that post their stupid and embarrassing posts, right?
Right.
That's different than really what you're talking about as it comes to our younger children. First of all, our younger children. And second of all, our children with special needs and the vulnerabilities. First of all, their inability to communicate and go, hey, I don't want that posted. They may not be processing the impact of that. But secondarily, you know, as a parent, sometimes you're concerned about the dangers that may come with posting your whereabouts or where your kids go to school or all that stuff. I tend to, I mean, we're going to have a counter argument or point counterpoint here, because my perspective is that we're already out there. Like, there's stuff of us out there already. You know, I'm having my 40th high school reunion this weekend. There's a bunch of stuff posted on the internet about me. I didn't know until I got, hey, you tag yourself. Your picture's posted, tag yourself. How many people are on Facebook and they get that tag yourself in a picture that's already been posted? I'm not sure that you can, you know, unless you just don't engage in social media at all, I'm not sure how you avoid it. And there's always dangers of, you know, around us on a daily basis. So it's really, how do you create that balance? And so, and again, you know, I'm just sort of rambling here, but I'll just bring this one up. I remember my mom had said, you know, way back in the day, she was like, I don't use an ATM. I don't use an ATM card. And I'm like, well, why not? Like, what if you need to access an ATM machine right away? Her perspective was, I don't want my information to be out there digitally. And I'm like, well, what kind of information are you talking about? She goes, I don't know, my home address, my location, any of that stuff. And I'm like, I'm just going to show you something. And I Googled her name, you know, online, and all of her information was posted there. You could post anybody's name and find out their location, how old they are, all the addresses they used to live at. I mean, if you really wanted to, if you have bad intent and you want to use information in a negative, in a bad way, you're going to find it. I mean, that's the reality, is you're going to find, you know, these hackers hack these large databases, you know, like Target and the banks and whatnot, to find your information. Yeah. Bad people are going to find ways to get your information, whether you're posting or not, is my opinion about it anyway. So I'm not saying that you shouldn't just throw all caution to the wind and just post all pictures of your children. I just think that sometimes these kinds of articles that warn us about the dangers of this take an extreme position just to create some awareness. And I think it's good to be aware. I don't think we need to run scared of posting stuff on social media about our children. So I don't know, but you guys, you know, taking a different, you and your wife are take a different approach about that. So share a little bit about that. Well,
you know, I've arrived at the conclusion that I'd probably refrain from posting his pictures until further notice. And when I say until further notice, I don't even know what that necessarily means.
Yeah, but why? But why?
To be honest,
But why?
Well, one, because the main thing is, we had a discussion about that, and I'll tell you this much: a lot of it, I'm trying to figure out, because the truth of the matter is, you mentioned earlier that your people are going to find out what they're going to find out or whatever, and you're not saying to throw caution to the wind and just post anything, and that's your opinion. I don't even think that's an opinion. That's just a fact. There's stuff out there for people to do. Like, for instance, I used to have this thing where I would see people with that drove convertibles, right? And I go to the gym, and it's like a general, parking lot, like a strip mall or whatever, and they would have the top down, get out and go into the gym, and they would have their locker and it would be unlocked. And I would think, why would you do either of those things? Chances are slim that somebody's going to, get a bucket of manure and just pour it into your car or go into your locker. But the bottom line is, it's now easier for them to do it, and they can. So the same is true of ill intent with regard to your information that is out there. They can. Now, does that mean that any and everyone's going to do that? No. And so when you stated that it's out there for people to, to get to, that's not just an opinion. It's a fact. It is there. I think it's extreme to just all of a sudden just kind of shut down. I think we have to accept that our information is out there. How it's disseminated is something that we have to try and take control of. But with regard to any posting on my end, especially as it relates to Elijah and that kind of thing, I don't know. I think there's some I don't know if it's soul searching is probably not the right term, but I don't know. When I say until further notice, I just feel like I don't know.
It sounds very extreme. I'm going to stop until further notice. You know what I'm saying?
Well, the reason is because, the other thing that's extreme is the only thing that it's more extreme is to say that will never ever happen again.
Right.
I don't, and I don't know that to be the case, but I think that, I don't know. It's just and I'm not sure where it's all come from in terms of right at this time, not just with, with that article per se, but I've thought about, you think about people that post where their children are not able to communicate like at all. And then the other thing is, for some people, it's a complete outlet if they're in a very severe situation where their child that they're caring for almost never goes out of the home, and their entire life revolves around, that child. And for some people, it is an escape and a getaway. And then for some people in the very same situation, they don't post anything and they don't even believe in it. So,
I think that, it's interesting because I think that there's a balance, right? It's mm-hmm. how much do you want to reveal of yourself, and how much are you crossing a line and revealing too much, right? So let's face it, we have social media like LinkedIn, where you basically post every place that you've ever worked before. And not only that, but if somebody searches, for someone on LinkedIn that, may have worked at that company 20 years ago, your name may show up as this person also worked there, or this person, there's an association, there's a relationship.
Right.
So if you're posting from a professional perspective, you're going to post stuff up on LinkedIn. You've put your stuff out there. So if you have no intent of utilizing social media to create a professional network, or look for a new job, or search for, then that's fine. But chances are, in this new post-pandemic world, you're gonna utilize LinkedIn for some sort of professional purpose, and you have to put information out there because people want to know a little bit about you. Mm-hmm. Folks are using Facebook, just to post, stuff to a network, and you can shrink your network to groups or to specific people that you want to share your information with. But the reality is, it's all 6 degrees of separation, as we all know. So, it gets out there. So I know people who I met with a friend of mine yesterday, who was a film producer. He's like, I'm off all social media because after the political craziness of last year, I don't want to be engaged in conversations with folks that are, so intense and so negative. And so I'm just off social media. And I said, well, altogether. Yeah. he's 36 and not married and no children, right? So
Yeah.
easy to do in that particular case. Independent, producer, so not really looking for a job or looking, easy to do, but that's a very small group of folks, right? So either you utilize social media or you don't. It's kind of hard to not do both, right? And let's say you use social media just for professional use. And you and I have this conversation all the time because the work that we do involves financial services and providing financial education to families. Mm-hmm. And in some cases, people want to know that you are more than just what you do, because it's a very personal connection that we have with the people that we engage with, that we speak to. And people want to know more about you as a person than just the person providing services. So mm-hmm. How do you use social media to provide a little background on who you are as a person, not just a professional, right. And not cross that line? And that's very difficult to do. And it seems odd, in my opinion, to be on social media and not talk about your family, right? It just seems odd. You could do it, but it seems very one-dimensional. It doesn't feel authentic to some degree, right?
Well, the other thing is, it's one thing to not talk at all, but it's about what you do talk about or share, especially if that's such a big part of who you are. And it's funny, when you look at social media, a lot of it lets you know who a person is by what they don't share as much as what they do share. And, I belong to a lot of support groups and things like that, especially on Facebook. I don't think Instagram necessarily has groups per se, but there are a lot of the groups where it's such a big comfort to a lot of the parents to be able to post the things that they're going through. And for some of them, even, a child's milestone or birthday or whatever the case might be, especially as it relates to development and things of that sort. And it's very, very encouraging, so there's definitely the place that's there. Not to mention the other thing, which you and I talked about, which was shared in that story as well, which is what do some of the kids want to do, later on in life. Now, again, with the special needs component, like how, if at all, does that impact the child when they become an adult later on, based on some of the things that that you post. So it's interesting to see, the perspectives that different people have.
Yeah, I mean, I would love to hear, if anybody has any comment about what you post, or should you post, should you not post, on social media. Is there a limit to it? When you have a blended family of special needs children and neurotypical children, how can you post achievements of your neurotypical children and not post achievements of your special needs child, right? So if you're posting graduation pictures or development or progress of your family and not include your special needs child. And by the way, God, Matt, so funny, Matt. I was just going to mention you, Matt Thaler. I was just going to mention you. It's so funny you're saying you're commenting here now. Matt's very public. He and his wife Julie are very public about about their daughter and the journey that they're on. And it's a I don't want to put words in his mouth, but there's a release, there's a sharing with the world, what you're going through, as a way to let people know that they're not alone. Let people know, as you want to inspire people who just need to know it's okay, that, and I was just having this conversation with another special needs mom the other day, where, a lot of times we go inward when we have the diagnosis and, we're dealing with it. We think, we're very private. We don't want to let people know much about it. And we feel alone when we do that. And oftentimes social media allows us to feel connected to others that are going through that journey. And we're going to be guests on Matt's podcast, Mindful Inspiration, which I'm so pleased to be able to do that. And again, I was going to mention Matt's a perfect example. He's utilizing his social media platform to to inform and encourage and inspire others. And so, by the way, it's a personal choice. And at the end of the day, Sean, I think that that's the key. It's always a personal choice about how much you want to share of your family. And, and at what age is it appropriate? And again, I'm not knocking like the scary things like identity theft, child abduction, digital identity theft. A lot of that stuff does exist, and it definitely it can be a scary thing. So it's something that people should consider. And articles like we posted earlier are good to remind people of the dangers of, what could possibly be there. At the same time, I think, again, it's an extreme. Those articles are always written to give you the extreme perspective, just to give you awareness, right?
Well, it goes to we were talking about, there's always a topic and then the subtopic. So yeah, there's the dangers of it. And then again, there's just the idea of how much one shares. Some people, sometimes I stop and I think of, okay, so when we were growing up, because you and I are like, I think technically less than a full 12 months apart from each other in age, right? So we're roughly in age.
And yet I look so much younger than you. It's the weirdest thing. But I'm sorry, go ahead. Keep it out.
But growing up in the 70s, the closest there was to social media was, like, for me, it wasn't anything on camera because video cameras existed then. But what I did more than anything is I recorded things like on cassette, whether I was singing or I was, hosting a make-believe radio show, whatever that, you had to take an extra level of kind of creativity, but there wasn't your outlet for the average person to just up and push a button and, and do that. And so, but it every now and then it still hits me that I'm so, comfortable sharing myself, and that was very gradual. And that doesn't mean that your family is necessarily fine with that too. So the subtopic is kind of like, how much of your personal situation and journey, do you share? And I don't know if people can tell on it, but I give great thought to how much of a personal situation I share, especially because if it's not all my story to share, Sure. And so that's, and again, then the other subtopic is us just being able to agree to disagree or respect other people's choices. Because the other thing that I learned from a lot of these groups where it's supposed to just exist with support, like, people didn't mean anything by it, but I posted a picture of, it wasn't even a picture of Elijah, but it was a picture of there's a place called Lakeshore Learning. They're not paying us. Lakeshore Education, I think, is what they call it, but they sell educational products, and traditionally teachers buy them. I'm sure they were very busy when the pandemic hit. So
yeah, I'm sure you're right.
Laura bought some things that, one of them was this cool little, I don't even know if it's a calendar, but it's on my Facebook. I took a picture of it, and it had, a poster that said, like, today is Wednesday, yesterday was Tuesday, tomorrow is, and it's got the days and everything. So then it also had the schedule. So what time you wake up, breakfast, go to bed, that kind of thing. And somebody commented once when I posted it, I got a lot of comments like, "Oh my gosh, that is so cool. Where'd you get them?" I'm like, well, I get no credit for it. My wife does. She found it, put it together, put it up and everything. And somebody was like, "Man, if I went to bed at that time and then got up at that time, I would be a wreck." And I posted a response where it was like, I know nothing was meant by it. But just keep in mind, when you have your quote unquote 2 cents, someone with a little bit of a weaker constitution could be less inclined to post something like that, when the intention is to let you know that here are these things that you might be able to use when you're, homeschooling during the pandemic and that kind of thing. So I would say think twice before you, I asked them to think twice before they posted something like that, because you might discourage someone else from inspiring other people. You don't know who's going to benefit from that. So, not everybody's cut out to share.
Yeah, no, I agree. And by the way, I'm not disagreeing with you, just so you know. Like, I hear what you're saying. This is just for a matter of discussion. I think that anything we do in life is first of all, it's a personal choice, and second of all, it's always about being cognizant of the impact on on your family and the choices that you make. By the way, we're not, I love our podcast and I love the folks who follow us. We're not celebrities. We're not famous people. We're not, athletes at the professional level. Those folks who are under a lot of public scrutiny, like the more popular you become and the more your life is chronicled by sources outside of your control, I think the more issue and concern about privacy for your family does come up. And in fact, celebrities often say, I don't mind you taking pictures of me, but stop taking pictures of my kids. So I get it. There's validity to the point of, I'm the person in the limelight. That doesn't include them. That they're involuntary participants in what I'm doing.
Right.
But I think the thing that social media does is it gives folks a relatability component, right? People relate to others, or they feel like they can relate to others. And so there's a benefit to sharing, again, to the biggest issue, not the biggest issue, but one of the big issues that families with special needs children have a lot is that feeling of being alone, or I'm going through this on my own, or nobody else understands what I'm going through. And oftentimes, when you can find somebody that you can relate to, it just makes the journey that much easier. Sometimes people say, people don't know what I'm going through, right? So I need to share this just so people understand, without me coming out and going, hey, I'm struggling, right? I'm struggling, so I need some support. Without coming out and saying that directly, sometimes people will share some of those things just to create awareness of what their situation is. And so, again, I think that it, it's a continuum, how much you share, how much you contribute.
And the social media aspect of it is one piece. It's funny because I didn't even, I had a family member that has a child that has a diagnosis. I'm trying to be respectful of privacy here as well, but I'll put it this way. What was shared with me about the diagnosis and everything is something that I came to find out is not commonly shared. And their child is not a toddler. So it wasn't something that they were outwardly letting others know about. And again, that too is a personal choice. We can head in a whole nother direction with that, but there's some people that don't really, some people aren't comfortable with that, and if they can get away without having to state it, especially if it's not debilitating and doesn't, lead to a lack of speech or anything like that, they kind of just, don't say anything. And that's a whole nother topic too. If we go back to, when people were institutionalized because of shame or whatever the case is, and how families deal with different diagnoses and situations, that's a whole nother topic, but it's all related. And I think it has an effect, with regard to how and what people are willing to share on social media. Although I do believe that most families, families for the most part, seem comfortable being parts of groups and opening up to let people know what they're going through, hoping to find out that they're not alone, and giving some kind of assurance for others. But like we said, it's a personal choice, which then takes us back to what we talked about: is how many things are there out there where choices are so personal that we, where we don't and could stand to respect each other's choices a whole lot more, even if we don't necessarily agree with them.
Sure. Yeah. Right. Much bigger conversation. I was just going down. I was just had a thought, and it just escaped me as you were talking. I think that it's okay. It'll come back to me. It's I know what more or less what I was going to say. We had a guest on. I think that people make. I think people can't help themselves, right? I think it's natural human nature to judge. We judge other people by our own perceptions, our own upbringing, our culture, our filters, whatever it is. We make certain judgments, and that most judgments are made in an uneducated manner. In other words, they don't know. They make a judgment based on what they know, not on the full picture. And sometimes having information, additional information, it just is exactly that. It just provides additional information that educates decision making. And I'll use this as an exact example. So we had a guest on our show who you and I are huge fans of, who's a agency chairman in our financial services company, who created a foundation that provides prosperity centers around the world. And it's he has a business plan that goes out to age 95. That's so far reaching, and it's about changing the world one life at a time. And he's adopted adopted children from other countries, and he has a broad family. He's very, like you, has a blended family, and he has 2 children on the autism spectrum, and he doesn't talk about it much. He doesn't talk about it very much, but he was willing to talk about it with us on our Just Two Dads podcast. And what I find interesting about that is his perception about it, and his role as a father, and what his wife has taken on in that dynamic. For me, and I know him very, very well, I think, or fairly well, I think. It created a more rounded picture. It changed. I mean, I know his situation, so it didn't really change my perspective, but I know how he shared his humanity in discussing his special needs children. I know it changed the perception of other people who have about him, who already have a high regard for him. It just created a broader picture, right? So it educates, conversations and disclosure and personal information informs and educates, and educates those judgments. Again, totally my opinion, but I think that when you have a better understanding of what somebody's been through, we on this podcast, we have people who do great things like Matt, who are doing things in the world to make a difference in the lives of other people. And our first question, which you ask all the time, is, let's go back. Tell us your origins. Where did you tell us about your childhood? Because that informs us of what their future and their decision making is on a going forward basis. The more we know about their personal history and their upbringing, their culture, and it informs us of, as we on a going forward basis, it colors the picture to some degree, right? So I'm just saying, I'm just rambling, but
no, it makes sense. It does. It makes total sense.
And for those who aren't seeing us on video, so Matt, I'm going to share in fact, Sean, I want you to respond to what I just said, but I'll read Matt's comment. One of the reasons we share so much about ARIA is because it's just like you talked about, it's connecting others, bringing awareness to epilepsy, connecting people with resources. Like I say, it's medically complex versus special needs. You're right. We use special needs a lot. It's medically complex. Opening the door for conversation in a different way rather than judging. And I think for the most part, we're all on the same page when it comes to that. It's informative, right? It's informing the conversation and eliminating as much as possible judgment that's generally based in, I don't want to say it's, people who are, I'll just say it informs our judgments and gives us education.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. And when you think about it too, like, if you think about some of the challenges, like I know in our case, I'm trying to think of what are some of the biggest things. It might be a meltdown. The majority of going places with Elijah is just like typically just not an issue. But if there's something that may have set him off beforehand, where that is maybe a change in a plan or something like that, I've been in situations where, we're in a store and I'm like, because if he's in the car and there's a meltdown or something like that, we're in the car. I can deal with that, between when we get home, but sometimes, if he's having a meltdown in the car, if it hasn't subsided enough, when we get home, we'll pull up to the door, and what he'll do is he'll get out, and he may get out the door and scream upset, running towards the front door. And, anytime I think that neighbors hear or something like that, nobody ever seems to. So between that and having him being 15 as opposed to 5, there's not a whole lot to get used to. And if something does happen in a store, I'm for the most part fairly calm and still feeling, you know, a lot less than I used to, of like, okay, can we just exit this store? Okay. And get through this. But when you talk about a diagnosis being new and the social aspect and that kind of thing, your feeling is like, nobody knows at all what it is like for me. Nobody knows that my child needs to look around and make sure that every item is in exact form and shape and place and everything before we go out the door. Nobody knows how long it takes for him to get dressed. Nobody knows that he doesn't eat this or doesn't eat that, or that this texture sets him off or whatever have you. So when that takes place in the very beginning, there's something to be said for having a place of comfort, you know, a room where you can go virtually, where other people are letting you know, oh no, you're not alone. I've been there. I've done that. Yeah. Or to have someone say, like, one of the things that people post commonly, which I've never been able to relate to because it's not been part of our experience, is during meltdowns, destruction of property or self-harming. You know, that just hasn't really been an issue for us, especially the destruction of property part. There's people that have gone through like a bunch of TVs. Matter of fact, just this week, I saw someone that posted about some product they were like crazy about. Because for those that are looking at our show, either live or looking at it on YouTube, you'll see as I touch this, go towards the screen, the frame of their TV had like some type of plexiglass cover around, and they were raving about it, going on and on, talking about no more cracked screens, because they would show pictures of a broken screen and they're like, this is the 5th one this year. And you're like, damn, I don't know what that's like. So the other thing is, the one, it's great to know that you're not alone, but then it's also great to, I always say that our biggest nightmares are other people's dreams. You know, so sometimes when you're going through this big challenge and you're like, oh my gosh, that's just so tough to deal with, you realize, wait a minute, this is a picnic compared to what that person deals with.
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
You know?
Yeah. I agree. I think it's interesting because I think when you have information, it fulfills. Ignorance was the word I was looking for before, right? It eliminates ignorance, right? So, hey Joe, my daughter, I love it when my daughter jumps on to our episodes, but you know, when you think you know, whenever you hear the story about somebody who's the diligent one, right? The person who's there first in the morning, the last one to leave, and that's the first of 2 jobs that they have, and they're working hard and they're amazing, and then you already think like, oh my God, I've got so much respect for that person. It's incredible. You see what the work that they do, and that nothing bothers them, and they're just hauling butt, and there's, you know, they're amazing, and then you find out that they have a special needs child at home. It adds a whole layer. I mean, it kind of increases the level of respect. You think, oh my gosh, they're doing that, and they deal with challenges at home,
and the hope that it gives you too.
And
the hope that it gives you too.
100%. And that's what I was going to say about you and Elijah. Because here's the thing I think about with Jordan, and we had this conversation when we had Joey Martins on our episode, where I've thought about it after the fact, like maybe that, you know, I'm just putting my own stuff into Joey's head, but you know, showing a picture of Jordan, my daughter Jordan, on her wedding day, and holding it out as a possibility, an image of, you know, something that may be possible in their future. Because you have somebody who's brand new in their diagnosis. Sometimes, you know, for those of us where our children were diagnosed 10, 15, 20 years ago, we've been through it, and in a way it adds as in the development, you know, the progress, you know. I love seeing pictures of Elijah in his suit. I think he looks amazing. And it shows what's sticking is that, you know, basically it's your consistency, it's your schedule, it's your reliability. Like, even though those are not words he's articulating, he is in what he's manifesting, right? He's mimicking, he's modeling what he sees in you. He puts his suit on to go to something important, whether it's school or to the office. Like, it's an amazing thing for a family that has just been, the child's just been diagnosed with autism. They don't know what the future looks like. They don't know what's in front of them. They don't know what next year looks like, or next month, or the holidays, or traveling. to see that image, like, oh my gosh, like, okay, that's some of this is going to stick. Some of this is going to make sense. Some of this is going to be a possibility for our future. It just creates opportunity for connectedness and relatedness, and, you know, alleviate some of that fear. Like, you know, when I share that Jordan, you know, as you know, Jordan's gotten married and is a stepmom, you know, right now, and, you know, it has a job, drives her car, you know, lives independently. Like, that's the kind of thing where we were told it was never going to happen. And so, you know, I never thought about not sharing that, because I think it's just so powerful. You know,
Right.
I wasn't concerned about it. By the way, I probably should have been more concerned about it when she was younger. So
Mhm.
I'm not discounting the concern that for people who, you know, are afraid of or conscientious, not afraid, or conscientious of posting.
Well, for some it is outright fear, you know, just like how, you know,
Sure.
we have different approaches. For some, it is an outright fear. I don't think that's the majority. But again, why it's such a personal thing.
Yeah, it is for sure, and that's why I like these discussions, because, you know, again, we've had, you know, Matt comment on, you know, they do it for a reason, and people who do it for a reason. And by the way, thank you, Matt. Matt saying it's inspiring to hear Joe's story and see how far she's come. And I think that that's the reason why we do it. And she posts stuff on social media, mostly Facebook, and she shares her life because, you know, the progress is something that she's proud of. It's something that we're all proud of, you know, and to see where she's come and how much she has achieved, it's you know, it is inspiring, and it's great. But you know, again, I think that for any subject, there's always the thing, you know, the thing that people should be aware of and conscious of, so that they're, you know, not to jolt everybody into, you know, fear. We don't want to disturb everybody, right? But just to create awareness. And I think that that's the one thing, is just to create awareness so people are conscientious. There's, you know, the movies that have come out, you know, about on social media, the social impact, or the social experiment,
The social network.
well, not the social.
The social experiment, I think, is what it was.
Yeah, where they went into detail about how much they, you know, you guys, if anybody, well, you're seeing this on if you're seeing this on Facebook, you know that the minute you mention or you do a Google search for bed frames, I'm trying to get a new bed frame. Oh my God, I cannot believe
Social dilemma. Thank you, Matt.
Thank you,
Matt posted that in Netflix.
Yes, but I was looking for a new bed frame and headboard for my bed, and now I get ads constantly from Wayfair and everything else, and IKEA. By the way, I'm sure for people who are in the creative industry, if they they're researching a subject that they're going to write a book about, or a movie or TV show, whatever, you're constantly doing Google searches, and you're then constantly bombarded with, you know, things on that subject.
Right.
Social media does have the ability to infiltrate our private lives. I have Alexa. I'm sure Alexa's listened to this whole conversation, and now I'm going to get another ad about bed.
See, now that this is interesting, because this will surprise you about me. When that first came out, I was like, what? That thing could be on because my brother has one. I was like, man, I'm not. Look, my wife and I are having a discussion. That's between the two of us. I'm like, those things are listening all the time. My brother's response was, they're listening anyway. So his thought was that it doesn't matter. So he says they're going to hear you anyway, so it doesn't matter. But
yeah,
it's interesting. You mentioned Netflix. I'm about to do something I don't ordinarily do. I don't remotely plug something that I haven't even looked at all, but I'm excited to look at it. My mom gave me a book. It's called The Reason Why I Jump. And I haven't gotten a chance to read it yet. And it's about autism, right? But what's really interesting is that it is now a documentary, and it is on Netflix.
Wow.
And it's I don't know, I'm really looking forward to it. I just, you know, and who knows, maybe it'll be horrible and there'll be a really rotten influence, and I've done a wrong thing by promoting it without looking at it first. But I wanted to share it because I'm very intrigued. And the author is right now. Sorry, the author is Naoki Higashida, and so it is. This is the inner voice of a 13-year-old boy with autism. It's a New York Times bestseller. And I don't know why I said that with that emphasis on the bestseller. It's a New York Times bestseller. Yeah, bestseller. But it is a New York Times bestseller, and it is one of the things that I have not taken a look at. But Jon Stewart refers to it as one of the most remarkable books that he's ever read. And as you know me well enough, and as you can see, right, just looking at a portion of my shelf, I need to get more. I have more books that I own than I do books that I've read.
It's that commercial where the guy says, I've never read any of the books in my house. It's one of the funniest things. Yeah. I've never read any of the books in my house.
Well, it's not that bad. I've read most of them, but I buy them so much that I can't keep up with what I purchase. And I'm just intrigued by this per se, and I'm starting to get the idea that when you say the reason why I jump, that takes place along with some of stimming. And I think it's got something to do with his perspective, because like it says, it's the reason I jump, the inner voice of a 13-year-old boy with autism. So
interesting.
I always find myself wondering, like, I'll ask Elijah questions and sometimes they're impossible for him to answer because I really want to get inside and figure out, like, what do you really see? Like, I wish that they were like, his eyes were like virtual reality glasses or something, where I could just put them on for a second and just like, okay, what does that look like? There was a film that about a boy named David, I believe it's animated, and it talks about what it feels like to have and live with autism. And at one of our events, we actually did a demonstration, like, he lowered the lights and had like a really itchy sweater, to give people different perspectives. But anyway, I'm a little off the rails, but it's all tied to social media some way, shape, or form, hopefully.
Yeah. I'm dealing with a bit of a family shock issue, literally as we are recording this. And, I think there's so much stuff that when we share our vulnerabilities and we share of ourselves, some way it's cathartic for us. Actually, I don't even know where I'm going with it. I think
it can be, and and the other thing is, this really astonishes me. I mean, it does every time, but we're at 52 minutes too.
Yeah. It's cool, which is good, because probably some stuff I have to deal with today. But I think that the conversation and the topic is interesting, because I think it, with everything that we do, there's always a balance of what we're trying to accomplish and what we want to share. And I think that, look, a lot of people post stuff on social media just for attention, right? They just want the attention. Some people just put themselves out there. I don't know how many times I say, hey, say prayers, need the prayer circle together. And you're like, oh my gosh, what's happened? A neighbor's friend's dog passed away. And then you're like, okay, I mean, so I mean, yes, we want to pray for the dog, but at the same time, it's sort of like, sometimes it's like, it's just a call for attention. And I think that, that
happens. Yeah,
it does happen. And so, social media, boy, I was on TikTok, we have this whole new generation of people who are communicating, and, some people post very personal stuff, and there are a lot of people who have a lot of negative opinions about everything, and they like to post negative stuff about anything. Mm-hmm. I was talking to somebody who does post quite a bit on social media, and I said to her, like, how do you put up with the negative comments and the what seems like personal attacks? She said, you know what? I think of them as being 6-year-olds who would just happen to have a keyboard or a phone and are just, shouting into the clouds because they're shouting into the storm because they can. She says, once I realize that I'm arguing with a 6-year-old, it feels kind of stupid, right? So you just acknowledge that. I thought that was an interesting perspective, that social media has created an opportunity, and this has been going on for 15, 20 years. The internet has created opportunity for dialogue to occur where people can anonymously sit behind a keyboard and type anything that they want. under a pseudonym or anonymously, and no recourse. And I think that that's, part of the issue is that, people have, people can say or do anything that they want. And again, I think having these kinds of conversations, open conversations, are good for us to just keep the dialogue going. So even though we don't have differing opinions, we're just on the end of the continuum. We're just on different ends of the same side. And
Definitely.
So
yeah.
So this is good for us to probably wrap up our show here as we've gone through an hour. I mean, seriously, we go through an hour so quickly. Now, as I always say, and then I'll let you wrap up. First of all, I love this conversation. Thank you for everybody who was contributing and commenting. If we've spurred, a thought for you, please share, put it on our Facebook page, subscribe, share it with your friends. Thank you for watching us on Facebook and on video on YouTube. And if you are catching us auditorily on Apple Podcasts or Google Podcasts or on WSTX AM radio down in the U.S. Virgin Islands, we love you. Thank you for being a part of our community. We hope the conversation is, stimulating and getting some thoughts, maybe discussions in your own home as to what you do as far as social media is concerned. And we hope to see you again soon. And Matt, we're looking forward to seeing you on Friday on your show. Thank you for having us. Thank you for being a great warrior, and congratulations on what you've been doing as you've been raising money for Aria's Army, as we have to call it, Aria's Army. And love you, Sean. I love you dearly. Now more than ever. Oh, wow, really more than ever. Empathy and love. It's kind of what it's all about right now, right? So I love you dearly, my friend. Thank you.
That is it. Love you as well. And grateful for this platform and to be able to share what we do with everyone. And, as usual, if anyone listening, regardless of where you're listening, just remember that somebody needs to know that you care. Somebody needs to know that you see them. People need to be heard. People need to know that they matter, and people need to be loved. And I could never begin to attempt to be who I hope to be, and would not be who I am without the women in my life. That includes my mother, Jan, and my amazing wife, Laura. And again, to everyone, thank you so much. And if you're watching this or listening to us, we love you. Thank you.
Bye, everybody.